I met Mike as a result of a tragedy that happened in my family. About 3 years ago, my son was murdered here. And to this day, Mike and I have been very close as a result of that incident.
In what way, from where he came in as a district attorney and you as the father of a victim of
Correct.
The worst crime of all, what was your interaction with Mike specifically, but also his department?
My initial reaction, or my initial interaction with them was with actual police officers.
Okay.
Those police officers, I have issues with police officers, period. There's no question about it. I study them, I've experienced them, and most of my experience has been mostly negative. And up until I'd say I came here to State College, I had some serious concerns about that. Well, they were diminished because how I was handled, how my family was interviewed, how my family was talked to, they were not spoken at.
Right.
They showed compassion, they were concerned, they went beyond as far as me being the father of the victim. They made certain that we were okay. It may take them maybe 10 or 15 minutes before they even got down to asking questions that were very sensitive. So in many ways, I was going through a whole different school set in terms of who they were and what they did, and Mike had a lot to do with that. I didn't even know Mike then, but when I did meet Mike, I had met Mike. So
When it came time for the trial,
correct.
and was there a lot of interaction between you and Mike in terms of what the case? I mean, this was a very serious. It was a murder case.
Correct.
And what kind of interaction did you have with him when it came time to deciding what course of action he was going to go for here? It could have been, a death penalty case.
Yeah.
But instead it became a life in prison case. What kind of interaction, what kind of feel did Mike get from you and your family for that?
There was a lot of prep here, Steve, a lot of probing. There was a lot of preliminary things done before we got to that. Never once did I meet Mike. I was asked to meet with him. He always came to me. It was always on my turf. It was always where I felt comfortable. It was always where I felt most, I say, original, in my office or in my home or in a place that's neutral to me. He adjusted to where I was, and I was never asked to come to Bellefonte. I was never asked to go to a police precinct. I was never asked to go to a cold place. He came to me. So when he came to me, he said, now, before I come, here's some things I'm going to talk about. Here's some things that are probably going to bother you, but we need to talk about them. And what I'll do is, so he always gave me preliminaries. He always prepared me for what was coming next. I was fine with it. The real concern was how he handled as far as my sons and my daughter and my wife. That I was very, very concerned about. But again, this is not an art. This is a science. And it's proven over and over again. There are ways of actually handling persons, particularly when it's cross-cultural. Well, he actually mastered it. Had nothing to do with, I'd say, race or gender. Had all to do with thoroughness and professionalism. And this is where he was. So I feel pretty good about it, even today.
What did you think of the way Mike handled himself in the courtroom for that trial?
I didn't go to the courtroom, and I told him I would not go. He asked me, I need to ask you why, and I mentioned to him, this isn't the kind of place I need to be. He said, well, I'd rather you go, but will anyone else not be going? But my whole family went, but I could not go. I would not go. I couldn't do that.
What do you think about Mike? Do you think he deserves to be reelected as district attorney?
It would be a great loss if you didn't. And I'm saying not so much for the persons he maybe goes after in terms of who committed the crime, but persons like myself, the silent victims, the persons we forget about. All the things that happen to the victim, no one really knows about, these kind of traumas, where you have to listen every day for almost 4 or 5 months, the brutal, the savage, the murder, the blood, all this your stuff. Mike would take that in consideration. But the average person would never go through what I'm going through or went through. But they hear it on TV relentlessly and have the television, CNN, and television shows and radio shows and reporters and police officers constantly bombarding you, and your life is completely wrecked. This is where he uses his office and himself as a vanguard for myself. It was pretty bad. Could have been worse. But a lot of large radio stations nationwide, because it happened in Penn State, were after me in terms of you want to know more about it. But Mike, in many ways, put a shield around me. Couldn't do it all, but he did that. So in reference to me, my family, my youngest son, he even still talks about Mike today. And this is rare.
You spoke about your wife and your other children. What were their thoughts about Mike and the way he and the rest of the DA's office handled both the pre-trial and also in the trial?
That's a good question. That is an excellent question, because that's where I was really, I'd say, cued as to what kind of man he was and also what kind of district attorney he was. And the two became the same. The man was a district attorney. My son, Dorian, who's the youngest, who's probably the hardest to get along with, anyone outside the family, particularly white males. Mike penetrated that, and he got to know him intimately. That's rare. You don't do that with Dorian. My youngest son, he doesn't have issues with race. He has issues with white males. Well, Mike became his friend. First time in my life I've ever seen it. So that answers anything. To me, that says volumes. So not only was he good at, I'd say, answering or asking questions that were very, very personable and very, very, I'd say, threatening and hurt and painful, but he allowed Dorian a way to speak on his own. The questions were open-ended questions, but they were said in such a way that my youngest son just flowed. That's rare. Doesn't do that. And after the interviews, it would be long discussions about this or that. So that speaks volumes to me. And I'm coming from a male perspective, but I'm also a highly intelligent man, but very, very, very few persons in, I say, law enforcement do I actually care for. My experiences have been rather bad with law enforcement, from district attorneys all the way down to, I say, a beat cop. They have been good. So, Mike, yeah, this isn't rehearsed. This is real.